Welcome back to another episode of the Road Racing 360 show presented by 1833 CJ Knows Accident and Injury Law. I know we missed an episode last week. Whether you noticed or not, I guess doesn't matter. But we were too busy going racing. We were at the opening round of the MotoAmerica series at Road Atlanta, so we didn't get an episode out. But this week we are back, and we are going to wrap up all the racing that happened at Road Atlanta for the MotoAmerica series, as well as MotoGP in Jerez. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I have to give a shout out to the sponsor of the show, 1833 CJ Knows Accident and Injury Law. They ride, they race, and they know the law. They're the people that make the show happen. So check them out. If you've been in an accident or wrongfully injured, call 1833 CJ Knows. Round 4 of the MotoGP series was underway at Jerez this weekend. Now to kick the race off, Fabio would make his way up front, pass for the lead, and then start to open up a gap on the Ducati boys of Jack Miller, Pecco Bagnaia, as well as a couple other riders that were dicing towards the front. So after getting the gap to about a second and a half or so, nearly to 2 seconds, it seemed like it was going to be a pretty uneventful race until disaster seemingly struck for Fabio. And at the time of the race, all we saw was him start dropping like a stone. So next thing we know, he is within striking distance of Jack Miller, who had been running in second. Then he is passed by Miller, who had then taken the lead, and then kept falling back all the way to 13th, where he would finish. And at the time, we didn't really know what the issue was. All we saw was Fabio dominating and then doing whatever the opposite of dominating is, because it was pretty bad for him to fall all the way to the top 10. So we're thinking, is this like what happened last year with the Yamaha struggles? Well, it turned out not quite. It wasn't actually really anything with the bike, but more so with Fabio himself. And we'll get into exactly what happened later, but it is a sort of commonplace in MotoGP for this to happen now. So to get on with the race, Jack Miller would take the lead, and he would not relinquish it until the end. This was Jack's first win since his surprise win on a Honda back in, 2016, 2017? Anyway, it's been a long time since Jack has won, and it was really awesome to see him finally get it done after coming so close multiple times over the past couple years on the Pramac Ducatis. He has finally earned it, and Viva Miller it was. His teammate Pecco Bagnaia would come home second, and Franco Morbidelli on the dinosaur of a Yamaha MotoGP bike from 2004. No, I'm just kidding, 2019, but still, it is pretty outdated. I feel bad for Franco. He's one of the most talented riders on the grid, on the oldest piece of machinery, and still getting it done. He would end up finishing on the podium. There would not be much of a challenge amongst those guys. It was not a really intense battle for any of those spots, but nonetheless, they would wrap it up. Taka Nakagami comes home 4th, Joan Mir in 5th, Aleix Espargaro 6th, Maverick Vinales 7th, Zarco 8th, Marc Marquez makes it 9th, and his teammate Pol Espargaro would come home 10th. Now, to dive into what happened to Fabio, he would admit later on that the drop through the field was caused by arm pump. Now remember, there are other riders that had also had arm pump issues in the past, and they had gone and gotten the surgery done that takes care of the arm pump issues, and that is actually what Fabio would go and do to take care of, rather than sticking around for the post-race test on Monday. So now, in Moto2, it would be Fabio Di Giannantonio, who would take a commanding win. He would pretty much dominate from start to finish, while Marco Bezzecchi would fight up through the field and get himself to second. Sam Lowes would come home 3rd, and American Joe Roberts would finish in 8th. And Cameron Beaubier, while battling for a top 10 finish, would crash out on the final lap of the race. Moving on to Moto3, it was Pedro Acosta who continues to make history at the ripe age of 16. The dude has been incredible this year, having 4 podiums out of 4 races, and the last 3 of them coming as wins. In a Moto3 class that is typically kind of just up for grabs for a bunch of different riders, he has taken the season into his own hands, and he now holds over a 50-point lead in the championship after only 4 races. So at this point, who knows when this domination will be stopped, but it doesn't seem to be anytime soon. Now to touch on the top 3 of Moto E, it would be Alessandro Zacconi, Dominique Agutter, and Jordi Torres coming home top 3. Now, as mentioned previously, after the Jerez race on Monday, we did see a post-race test go down. Jerez is a track that is a pretty popular test track, so no surprise that teams were back at it the very next day. We would see some teams try some new things, and it would be Maverick Vinales who would come out on top. After somewhat of a disappointing finish in the race, he would make up for it by claiming P1 in testing, as Maverick typically does. Second would be Alex Rins, who had crashed out on the first lap of the race on Sunday. Joan Mir would be third, Taka Nakagami fourth, Zarco fifth, Paul Espargaro sixth, Miguel Oliveira seventh, Luca Marini eighth, Franco Morbidelli ninth, and Pecco Bagnaia in 10th. Now, not all riders were present for the post-race test, but that does give you an idea what people made, maybe some strides and some improvements on the day after the race. We did see Honda try a new fairing that resembled that of a Yamaha, so interesting to see how this aerodynamics kind of game is being played in Honda, how they're trying something new that looks very similar to their main rival. And final news coming from the MotoGP paddock, it was that KTM has extended their deal with Tech 3 Racing all the way through 2026. So it is official, Tech 3 will remain in orange as the satellite team for KTM for the next 5 seasons. I'm pretty happy to see this. I think Tech 3 has done an incredibly good job with KTM and vice versa. And KTM has provided Tech 3 with competitive equipment, seeing as they did take multiple race victories last year with Miguel Oliveira. Now, there was some World Superbike testing going on. I will touch on that in another video. There's just so much racing to cover that I can't possibly get it all this episode. So we will jump overseas from Europe to Road Atlanta for the opening round of the MotoAmerica Championship. Now, jumping in with Superbike Race 1, we would see pole sitter Jake Gagne blow a motor. Pretty big surprise coming from the Attack Performance. What are they now? The Fresh and Lean Attack Performance Yamaha team. This is something very uncharacteristic for them, but something that sort of just happens. Unfortunately, that would ruin his first race early after having a really promising weekend. So that would set up a pretty exciting battle coming down the stretch between Westby Yamaha's Matthew Skoltz and Loris Baz, the Frenchman on the HSBK Warhorse Ducati. Pretty exciting battle happening. That battle would not see the finish. Loris Baz, while trying to fend off Matthew Skoltz, would end up tucking the front, getting his Ducati stuck in a gravel trap and claiming a DNF for the first race of the season. Not the start that Baz was hoping for his title campaign, but it was the start that Matthew Skoltz was looking for with the Westby Racing team. That team has been plugging away, improving every single year, and the only person really in their way last year was Cam Beaubier himself. But now that Cam has gone off and raced Moto2, it is an open championship. And to see Matthew take this first race in his hands and claim his first victory in a little while is awesome to see. Wrapping up the top 3 would be Bobby Fong and Josh Herrin. Race 2 would see Jake Gagne with a fresh motor in his Fresh and Lean Attack Performance Yamaha. And there he would continue his hot streak through the weekend, where he would take his very first Superbike race. Matthew Skoltz would come home second, claiming the championship lead coming out of this race, and Josh Herrin would make it third. Bobby Fong was right up there in the mix, but he did end up jumping the start, would have to serve a ride-through penalty, and would still come home in 5th, right behind his teammate Cam Peterson. Loris Baz would take another DNF after having a shifter linkage issue apparently happen throughout the race where he would have to pull in, get that fixed. He would go back out and get some more laps, but he would not finish anywhere close to the front after losing multiple laps throughout the race. A real shame and quite a surprise to see Loris Baz not get anything this first round, but I think it does set up a pretty exciting championship hunt now that he is going to have to be playing catch up and is going to be hungry for wins to try to close the gap to the guys at the front. Moving on to Supersport, Sean Dillon Kelly would do the double at the opening round. Richie Escalante did seem to lack a little bit in the race. I think part of that was due to a really big get-off that he had in qualifying where he pretty much totaled his Kawasaki ZX6R. That would cause him to, what I assume, is resort to a backup bike. Whether he was feeling 100% or gelling with a different machine, hard to say, but he would provide really no competition to Sean throughout the races. Sean would walk away. In race 1, Escalante would be second, and after a red flag restart that would see some of the other guys that were racing towards the front out, Nolan Lampkin would take his very first podium in the MotoAmerica Supersport Series. Really awesome to see my buddy Nolan get on the podium for the first time, and dude's been working really hard and absolutely earned that. Race 2, again, would see Sean Dillon Kelly take a commanding lead, Richie Escalante a little ways back, and a 4-rider battle this time would come down to the wire for that final podium spot. This time it would be Stefano Mesa, Xavier Zayat, Ben Smith, and Rocco Landers all battling it out. Rocco Landers would make a pass with a couple corners to go to claim the final spot on the podium. Stefano Mesa would be 4th, Xavier Zayat 5th, and Ben Smith would make an incredible save, Tokyo drifting it out of the last corner, running off the track on the inside before pulling it back on and coming home in 6th. Now we got another really interesting class that we don't see it every round, and that was the King of the Baggers. King of the Baggers would be a really exciting battle between Harley and Indian. This is a rivalry that goes back about as long as motorcycles has been around between Harley and Indian. And it would be Kyle Wyman on the Harley and Tyler O'Hara duking it out. They would be going back and forth a little bit before it was Tyler O'Hara who would bring home the win for the Factory Indian team at the first round of the King of the Baggers series. Now this would be the first of 3 races that they will have throughout the season, and it is going to be Tyler O'Hara claiming the championship lead to start out the season. Now, to wrap up the support classes, in Stock 1000, race 1 would see Michael Gilbert on a brand new ZX10, Ashton Yates on a brand new CBR 1000 RRR, and then Travis Wyman on a BMW S1000R. Race 2 would see Travis Wyman dominate, Jeff May come home on that new Honda, and Ashton Yates on the new Honda as well come home 3rd. It looks like these new bikes are showing some promise for sure, especially with the limited amount of time they've had on track. It'll be exciting to see what all these guys can do throughout the season as they get some more testing time and get further along with the development of their new bikes. Junior Cup would see Tyler Scott on the KTM RC390R take the win in race 1. Ben Glotty would be 2nd, and David Kolstad would be 3rd. Race 2 would see a flip-flop of the front runners. It would be Ben Glotty taking the win, Tyler Scott in 2nd, and Cody Wyman on the Kerr Moto Racing Kawasaki Ninja 400 in 3rd. And the final class of the weekend would be Twins Cup. Race 1 would see Caleb DeCarroll take the win, Jody Berry in 2nd, and myself, Hayden Schultz, in 3rd. And that would make it an Aprilia R660 sweep for the first race of the Twins Cup Series. Now race 2 would see a major shakeup amongst the points and the finishing order, and it would actually see all of us Aprilia riders in the gravel trap. There seemed to be some sort of fluid leaking out of the front runner of Caleb DeCarroll, which would take all of us out. Next thing we know, we're in the gravel trap. That would leave Teague Hobbs left standing at the front. Trevor Standish would come home 2nd, and Chris Parrish would come home 3rd, making it a Suzuki sweep for race 2. And that is all we have for this week's episode of the Road Racing 360 show presented by 1833 CJ Knows Accident and Injury Law. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you guys next week.